Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of The Fluid Voice. I am your co host, Ileani Clark, and with me, I am very fortunate to be addressed by four amazing people in our today's show speaking on trans organizations. And to add a respect for our special guests, I'd like to introduce Rhetoric and Discourse. How are we doing this evening, Rhetoric?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good.
And I guess, Rhetoric, you said you mentioned previously before we went live that you've been doing YouTube content for how long? Is that correct?
I've been doing it, I think, since 2014, 2015.
Any big projects coming up in the light, or that you know of that?
So I have a bunch things that I've promised a bunch of people. Gosh, all the things. Potentially have what one of the things I want to do, and I have a potential start is I'd like to spread a little bit more awareness about different communities that don't necessarily get a whole lot of good representation in YouTube. So I might have a stream with objectively subjective on autism and sort of some of the things that happen with autism. People who actually have been following my channel for a long time expect me to talk about flat Earth soon. I probably should finish that stuff.
That's been a pretty big topic. I'm a big follower of modern day debates. I see a lot of their debates over the flat Earth versus the round Earth. And, always interesting discussions.
If you want some money in making YouTube content, go be a flat Earth debunker. That's a good place. Not gonna lie, you get a good amount of money. It's good going there.
And so I share the love. I'm also very fortunate to be co-hosting with Perfict. How are we doing today, Perfict?
Just fine. How are you?
Same. How was your week? Good?
Pretty good.
And then, of course, above Perfict, we have one of my favorite individuals of all time, Christy Abbey. How are we doing tonight, Christy?
We're doing good. Much better than last week. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then, of course, below me and Rad, we have Ozma in the Dark, also known as Alex. She does phenomenal D&D streams. How are we doing tonight, Alex?
I'm doing pretty well. Once again, that is not where I am. I am sandwiched right between R&D and you, Ileani Clark, on my screen. Crispy Abbey and Perfict are below me.
Yeah. However it shows up on the actual YouTube is not going to be the same order you see it.
Every one of us has a unique perspective.
Well, on my YouTube channel, it will show up like this.
Well, one of the great things about tonight's episode is we're going to be speaking in length about trans organizations. And primarily, I'm just going to ask generalized questions in regards in a roundtable affair like we typically do on the aspects that you guys know or possibly don't know in regards to different organizations. And I guess to first start off, let's just go with the political organizations. What is your guys' opinion regarding the trans representation or the trans community in your perceptions, for example, of the Democratic Party? What do you guys think? Do you think that they are good representatives of the trans community? Maybe you don't know, or anybody feel free to jump in.
I think sometimes they go, or a lot of times they go very close to centrist in terms of policy. They're like LGBT rights, you know, we'll think about that if we think that maybe enough people, we're not going to fight for it unless we think we can get enough votes. We're not going to actually go for it unless we unless they think they're definitely going to win oftentimes.
Christy, Perfict, Abbey, Rad, any opinions in regards to the Democratic Party in regards to representation? Do you guys have any takes on that?
Well, one of the things that has been going around is that trans issues are boutique issues, and I was very pleased with the pushback that Elizabeth Warren did. It's like protect trans children, medical services for trans children. Her plan cover, protect trans adults, bathroom bills are stupid. She did a whole like Elizabeth Warren half hour on it, and said all the right things at least. And I hate to say anything nice about Bloomberg because he is a bit of a dick, but his record on trans issues has been pretty good.
Pretty shaky. I have to generally agree with you on that take as well, Christy. But we can only hope our fingers crossed that our preferred candidate would get the nomination. We'll see what happens though. How about Rad and Perfict? Did you guys have any take on this? Like, what do you think about the Democratic Party in regards to their representation of trans individuals?
They seem to really play it safe with like almost any social issue. Like I think, like it was said earlier, it's definitely like we're not gonna actually put up a fight until we know we can win, which is a little sad because I wish they would actually just put up a fight more often. But I do see it, if nothing else, there's benefits to things like making healthcare more accessible. If the Democratic Party gets behind that, that also benefits trans individuals quite a bit, because I know that that's an issue that affects a lot of people. And so a lot of the sort of the social programs end up being beneficial for trans individuals, which is great. But I wish there was more of a push of like, we're going to do this for trans individuals rather than what feels like you get the scraps of the good things we did, you get to have the scraps of that. I'd rather it be more on the forefront, like we're doing it for you, not just as a side benefit.
Kind of like in the case of them being like kind of like an opportunistic type of situation. Is that kind of like what you're kind of like?
Yeah, it does. Sometimes it does feel like that to me. It's very, very opportunistic. Yeah.
Sorry, I was suddenly reminded of the people who get the scraps of the scraps, trans women of color.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I tried to argue for so someone got like way more money than they petitioned for. And I'm just like, oh, you know what? Like, you've got all this extra money. You could like, you know, give some to trans women of color, and it's like she got like, you know, a couple $1,000 extra, and she's like, yeah, here's $45 to. Ooh. Like, yeah, exactly. I'm just like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, I think one of the crucial issues that a lot of people need to address is, like, recently I came across some information regarding how some people think that, for example, when it comes to the issue of people of color and individuals within the trans community as well, when they have both of these identities intrinsic to themselves, there has been this massive push among some circles that, you know, like the information about these people of color that are trans aren't being victims of murder. They aren't being victims of violence. Yet I can show anyone statistics. I can show someone facts. Like I recently had a discussion with someone about this, and I can clearly show you based on the FBI statistics and the Bureau of Justice statistics and how this is actually happening. And it astonishes me that a lot of these individuals don't understand that this is a huge problem, not only in regards to financing, regarding to representation within or in the United States, and I can't even imagine the rest of the world, but also just how many people are pushing back of these people's identity based on their demographics. And it's troublesome for me. But real quick, so I give everyone a chance. Perfect. Did you have any opinions on the parts of the Democratic Party? Do you think they represent the trans community, or?
This isn't the first place I've heard trans people expressing the idea that they felt that the Democratic Party was too into the vote analysis. That does sound like a good idea and something we can get behind. How many votes are in that? And that they felt that was very much they were being treated as a commodity.
Kind of like how sometimes you hear this in situations sometimes from certain individuals, like they believe, like, for example, again, I don't know, I don't think this is reasonably true, but it's possible that, like, for example, some African Americans feel like there's this pushback. Like I think it was called, not Third Way, I forget the name of the group. It's like Resist or whatever. It's like a hashtag on YouTube, on Twitter. but how you have certain people of color feel like they've been abandoned by the Democratic Party, kind of like that connotation. Perfect.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yes.
Gotcha.
Real quick, we're not live.
We are live on my end.
We are live.
We are?
Yes, I'm streaming.
Where are you? Why am I not seeing it?
I have no idea. I'm checking right now.
It just says waiting for.
Yeah, same thing on mine. If I go to the Fluid Voices
Okay, give me 1
YouTube
second.
channel.
Yeah,
Luckily, on my end, it's live right now. So worst case scenario, you can always copy the first little bit of mine if it doesn't go live
Right.
all the way on your end.
Have you recorded on Zoom before?
Yes.
Not you, Alex.
Oh, I don't record on Zoom.
Oh, okay. There.
I
it
just
takes about
stream.
10 minutes to render. It'll take you a few minutes to render because it'll be a huge file and then it'll shrink to a
Give me
small
1
file.
second, guys. What in the world?
Yeah, I'm essentially live using Zoom on one screen while using Streamlabs OBS to stream it to YouTube, Twitch, and several other channels.
Are you streaming to Twitch?
And YouTube
Okay.
at the same time.
Oh, so it's on your channel, but it's just not.
Yeah, on my channel. That's what I'm saying.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Give me a second, guys. What in the world is this? Okay, now we're live. Oh, great, Scott. Okay, guys.
Like I said, it's yeah. Go on.
So let me do the introductions again. I apologize, and that's my mistake. I don't know what was going on. The encoder had a problem there. Anyways, so I apologize for that to everyone who is watching. Again, you're watching the Fluid Voices episode 6, talking on trans organizations. With me, I have 5 amazing people. We have Rad, Christy, Abbey, Ozma in the Dark, also known as Alex, and Perfict. We were going live for like 10 minutes, and for some odd reason, I made a boo-boo on my end. I'm kind of dumb on this part, so I apologize to all my co-hosts.
Yeah.
That was a mistake.
You can, like I said, you can take the first half because on my end, it is live, so the video is out there. So people watching my thing saw it from the start.
Okay, cool. So I will definitely fix that later on. So we were talking in length about the Democratic Party in regards to our opinions, in regards to representation of the trans community. But let's do this real quick. So since we're on this topic, what is your guys' opinion in regards to the trans community in reference to the Republicans? Do you think that they do any form of positive representation of the trans individuals, or do you think it's purely negative? What is your guys' opinion on that?
John Kasich seems to be not transphobic. That's the best we can hope for. The Republican Party is just so fucking out there right now. I don't know what to think.
I guess I don't hear a whole lot of, if nothing else, and maybe it's just because I don't get exposed to it as much, but I don't hear a whole lot of negativity, like from the party, like from Republicans themselves. I hear a lot of transphobia, but from like the Republican Party, I don't see, besides like the military ban, I don't see like a lot of laws trying to be put in place to restrict. But maybe I'm wrong. And as I sit here, I'm like, oh wait, they just try to do a few, so never mind.
Yeah. So
yeah.
If I can really quick address it, so I agree that generally you don't see a lot of like laws or anything like that being put in place against trans identity or trans individuals. But see, one of the issues I have, and this is from my own personal situation, is being a veteran, relying heavily on the VA. One of the biggest problems over the last 3 years in reference to veterans like myself that are also trans, a lot of the Trump administration has pushed back on regards to funding and providing adequate support in regards to the trans community. And it's a huge problem. I had a discussion with someone roughly about a month and a half, 2 months ago about this very topic. It took them many, many years to actually get a diagnosis and finally get treatment. And even to this day, even with that such treatment, they're a Vietnam veteran, by the way. They still don't get the amount of necessary care that they need because of the policies in place. And that's a huge problem for me, but that's my perspective in reference to that. So.
And it might be that it's not as overt, but there's
Well,
cuts to medical services.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of attempts. So there was the retraction of the federal transgender workplace discrimination laws. There's the law that allows for you to reject transgender patients in like hospital places, stuff like that. At the very least, it was an attempt. I don't know necessarily how many of these went through or if all of them went through. I know obviously there was the Trump's method to prevent crime or whatever, which involved getting a lot of trying to collect people's psychological information. I know that one failed, but that would also be a way to find out everyone who's trans, which would add to potential uses for discrimination. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess how about real quick, so I make sure everyone has a chance. Perfict and Christy, did you guys have any opinions regarding what you guys think in regards to the Republican Party when it comes to the trans community? Do you guys have any takes on that, or?
I said my take. Thankfully, that doctor thing didn't go through. Although private Catholic hospitals, which are the only hospitals for a lot of people in their area, are still allowed to discriminate. Which, my own experience as a baby trans, I contracted pneumonia, and when they found out I was trans identifying because I wasn't on hormones yet, they wouldn't let me shave, and I was there for a week. My ex-wife smuggled in nail polish, so that was nice.
Wow, that's wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is heartbreaking. That is like legit heartbreaking to hear that someone would think that that's okay. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I just generally don't have a response to something like if someone prevented me from. Yeah, that just. I'm sorry that happened to you, Christy. But just so I can give everyone a chance, because that really threw me off for a second. Perfect. Did you guys did you have a take in reference to what do you think of any opinions on the Republican Party regarding trans community representation, or?
Well, not after that. No.
Seriously.
No, it's nothing to apologize for. It was just.
I know that the community that I've spoken with, their opinion of the Republican Party is that the Republican Party just wants them to, walk off into the woods and die, so that the Democratic Party looks really good by comparison. That was a lot of what I heard, was that the Democrats look lovely and inviting.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty fair to say that in regards to both organizations, one could be possibly or is more likely better than the other. But I think it's pretty fair to say in regards to both standards that a lot of work can be done to improve both entities, both organizations in regards to trans community in general. That's basically what I would say. One is, in my opinion, of course, better than the other, but at the same token, both of them can always get better. So. I guess the next thing we're going to approach is.
Well, wait. Aren't all the elected officials who are trans, they are Democrats?
Primarily, like here in Arizona, there's a representative that I'm really fond of by the name of Leanne Westbrook. She actually did incredibly well in the 7th district here in Arizona. She actually got 47% of the vote. which is actually pretty astounding in a very highly conservative state. But yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, so we can move this along. Do you guys have any personal organizations that you guys have maybe can reference or personally know that you feel that maybe have helped you in the past, that you've heard of from other people from third-party sources, that you feel that have done adequate or really good work toward helping trans individuals or the very community itself? Anybody?
Let other people. I've got a lot going.
Sure.
I think you mentioned you had a couple, right, Alex?
Well, I had a couple that I had problems with, but I think in terms of stuff that I haven't actually done a ton in terms of how should I put this? I have not been a very social person when it comes to trans community for a long time. Out Front, Minnesota, is a pretty good one. I'm mostly used to the Center for Sexual Health at the U of M, although they tend to like the the standards of care, the W path. That's what I was trying to think of. A little too much, but and also Smiley's Clinic, which works with the U of M. I think the Hennepin County Health is also the outside of U of M Center for Sexual Health. I want to say it's Hennepin Healthcare is the only other place that you can get gender confirming surgery through.
And this is these are all organizations in Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yes. These are ones that I've actually worked with to some degree. Well, outside of Out Front, I'm just like aware of Out Front.
So, real quick, if I could just mention, so Christy, I'm sorry, Alex, real quick. So later on, if I can get that information from you, I think that would be great. If there's any other trans individuals in your community or in your state, I can put that information out there on the description tab, so they have the reference to this later on, because you never know. So if you can, I'll touch base with you later, Alex, and we'll add it later on. So, but go ahead, Christy. I apologize.
Oh, if you want to get trans services in Minnesota and you can do it, Rochester, Minnesota has surgery, one of the best in the country on the surgery front.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where the surgeons themselves is different from the places that you go to do all the stuff before the surgery.
Oh yeah,
is done through either U of M or Hennepin Healthcare, because I don't think any other hospital deals with that in Minnesota. Yeah,
I do want to ask this question, and this is actually a good question to R&D, because I want to try to spare us out the conversation. But R&D, I know your experience you mentioned is not as vast as you would like it to be in regards to this topic. Mm-hmm. But I guess a big question for me is, in your opinion, it doesn't matter, because I know you're Hispanic, is that correct? You're Latino? Yep. So, even if, I know you don't have a perspective in regards to trans identity, but you have an identity in regards to your ethnicity. So in your opinion, what are the primary things that you think would be a good indicator of a good organization to maybe represent for your own identity? I know it's different circumstances, mm-hmm. Of course it's different, but what do you think would be good criteria for
that? Probably the first would just be being welcoming, would probably be the first criteria. And I saw him in Nebraska, which is, I'm in the only city in Nebraska, which is Omaha. So thankfully, I live in the most civilized place in Nebraska because the rest of it is
it's
a
like
little iffy. Yeah, it's a little iffy for the rest of Nebraska. So I thankfully live around and I go to University of Omaha, and they, as far as I can tell, and again, I don't participate or part of the community, but as far as I can tell, they have a pretty good trans community and support for trans community. The hospital that I work at also has a lot of support for it, for the trans community. I think, and I have to ask my friend who did it, but I think they did do an event, I think for the Day of Remembrance. I think that's what it was for. Because my friend
was it in November?
It was in November, and they went and read names of trans individuals who have died that year. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the day. But it was back in
November 20th.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So I think they were doing that, and so that was like my hospital did that, and tries to be as accommodating as they can to all the trans individuals who work, and it's a fairly big campus. So I do see a good amount there, and it's most of what I see them do is honestly just we have to do things like cultural training on how to understand people from different cultures, how to be empathetic, and honestly I think that helps quite a bit. The first time I went through it, I kind of laughed at it because I was still when I was back in my reactionary days, and so I was like, oh, this is so silly. I can't believe they want me to learn to get in touch with my feelings. That's dumb. It's all about being logical and whatnot. But I did, but going through those, you do learn a lot, and they do teach you a lot. It's not just about the trainings that we do isn't just about it's about like sexual orientation, gender identity. It's about cultural differences, race. It's about everything. So I think those are very helpful to give to a whole campus worth of people. Like, hey, if you're gonna work here, you gotta learn how to be empathetic and realize that there's lots of different kinds of people in the world, and they're all still people. So those are the kinds of things that I see and that I see are very helpful.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with your take, and see one of my favorite sayings is identity matters, and not in the way that's with the specific connotations, but for me, like, everyone's intrinsic identities are important. Everyone's identity should be respected. You may not agree with their identities depending on what your worldview is, but you got to at least respect the person for who they are. And I think that's one of the important aspects that a lot of organizations, a lot of people, or even individuals, hopefully can learn to address, so we can have better coordination, better relationships in the workplace, in our personal relationships, on social media, or anywhere in general. You know what I mean? So that's my position on that. Real quick, so Perfict. So I give you a chance. Did you know about any organizations that you feel are good representations in regards to the trans community that you wanted to speak on, or?
No, I really didn't have anything to add on that.
Fair
Sorry.
No, it's not a problem. So to kind of wrap up this topic for this episode, I do want to go ahead, Christy.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to go last is I was wondering if anybody was going to deal with these. I've said before, one of the things that our siblings in the South have sort of is Planned Parenthood does a lot of trans services in the South. In Phoenix, where you are, however, because they have Spectrum, which is also a national organization, they Spectrum takes care of the transgender services there. We have Spectrum here, but it's only mental health. So because we have Evergreen, which is also a big organization through Pride.
Remind me, didn't you say that you're doing a function later on in regards to helping support the Planned Parenthood? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
What's that entail, and what are you going to be doing?
Oh yeah. we're having there's a 2-day event. It's called Punks for Planned Parenthood. And I've told this story to you guys, but I'll tell it to the public at large. The person who organized it was surprised that like all the trans musicians in Buffalo wanted to get involved. It's like, and did not know how much transgender services come through Planned Parenthood in places where there isn't anything else for us. And I work with a lot of people. I'm a trans mom to a lot of people, and the first place I look when they say they need help, the first place I look is Planned Parenthood in their area. The second place I look is Spectrum, and it's one of those things where Planned Parenthood gets such a bad rap for a lot of reasons. Most of them stupid. With apologies to.
Yeah, if I can just mention this, a lot of people don't understand that 98%, if I remember, if that was the correct percentage, 98% of the things that Planned Parenthood does, and the controversial thing is, of course, abortion. But people don't recognize that 98% of the stuff that Planned Parenthood actually does has nothing to do with abortion. They do care, they do prenatal care, they provide testing for STDs, they do pregnancy prevention, they do trans support, they do other different things other than just this one single thing. And I agree with you. It is troublesome that with all the services this organization provides, that so many people are trying to demolish it on the principle of just one thing. You know what I mean?
Well, so. just even saying that the organizer didn't know why the trans musician community came out in force for this, is saying that not every. I mean, somebody who's actually organizing an event didn't know this is a thing they do. So
yeah.
The first place I'd advise anybody to call is Planned Parenthood and Spectrum if you've got it. You've got it in Phoenix, so and
I've actually referenced them. So
oh, okay, good. Good. Then you're more familiar than I am.
So real quick, so we can go on to the next part of the show, but I just want to throw out a couple of names out here to some phenomenal organizations that are here in the U.S. In regards to providing a great avenue for support that may give information or possible resources in regards to trans individuals across the country. I'm going to be listing all these in the description tableau after the fact, so anybody who watches this can also reference it. But one of the groups I want to mention is National Center for Transgender Equality, National Transgender Advocacy Coalition. The other ones I want to mention is the Transgender Archive. They're really amazing. Transgender Law Center. And I think this is, to me, one of the biggest ones that actually do a lot of great work is Trans March. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with Trans March, but they do organizations all across the country in regards to representing the LGBT community in general. And it's an incredibly powerful movement. And again, I will be providing this in the description tab. So anybody, feel free to always, if you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter as well. And I'm assuming everyone else, as far as they can on their own social media, if they have that information on hand. So
one of the things, of course, Pride centers, and I know there's some difficulty at some of the Pride centers, although it's a loosely connected chain. Yeah, they have to follow certain rules, and Buffalo is very trans friendly, and there is a more than our proportion of trans people here. I'm starting to get the story about why, but the Pride Center here, almost all the staff are trans, instead of just the regular LGBT
And I think if you, like I told Alex earlier, if I'll grab that information for you, Christy, later after the show, and I'll make sure to put that information in the description tab, so anyone could later on watch the show, they'd be able to pull that information, and hopefully it helps them. So
I hope so.
So in this part of the show, we used to do call-ins, Rad, in regards to that, but we had a little bit of kerfluffle. So one of the things that I would love to address is, since you're very, very kind to show up on our show, to hear your perspective in regards to different things. I know you said that you're not versed in regards to this community. That's completely understandable. But one of the things, as I mentioned in our discussion on Twitter, is I believe that everyone has a unique perspective in regards to this community, not only strictly trans identity. It's important for trans individuals to identify in regards to their own in their own intrinsic identity, but it's also understandable if other people have a fair analysis in regards to empathy toward this community as well, because you don't know if their circumstances could be they have a relative that is maybe going through the similar experience, or they could have a coworker or a good friend that they may have grown up with that is going through this same situation. And this information, in my personal opinion, helps a lot of people address the very concept of identity itself and how it's so important in regards to our communication with other people. So I guess my question would be, what do you feel like right now in regards to your own observations on social media, maybe in politics or what have you? Are there anything like particular like you've been having issues with regarding like talking points or anything that you want to mention that you think is important?
Probably the thing that I always bump into a wall about is trying to balance out calling out like transphobic behavior and balancing that out with also trying to help someone improve. There's a fine line. One of the fun things that I learned the last sort of through my whole journey into learning about trans individuals and the trans community is I do psychology. I'm a therapist. I'm a behavior therapist, and so I got to read this great article about how confrontation does make for like quick changes in behavior. So you confront someone, you're like, hey, that's transphobic, that's racist, that's sexist. You can get a pretty quick like, oh, okay, I'll stop kind of reaction. But at the same time, it comes with this consequence of that person having negative feelings and thoughts towards the individual who confronted them. And so that ends up being it has some backlash to it. And it's so there's always this fine line of like wanting, and it's one of the things that I've bumped into a lot, and I get a lot of criticism for on especially social media, is that I am one of those people who's very much so like, you're being transphobic, stop it. And I immediately just tell them to stop, and I will immediately say, hey, your behavior is transphobic. And I don't necessarily label everyone like, if you do a transphobic thing, you're not a transphobe. It's just that your behavior is transphobic. So stop that behavior. But I immediately get you think everyone's transphobic. You think everyone who disagrees with you is transphobic. What is, your perspective is pushing, this is why I can't deal with you and your kind of people. Like, you push me away. You make me want to be more reactionary or more whatever. And that's the part that I have a hard time. Like, I want to find a balance, but at the same time, I also want to put a stop to like some of those behaviors are just so genuinely, they're things like misgendering. I just stop it. Like, you can just stop that. You don't we don't need to have a giant discussion about the virtues of using proper pronouns. You should just stop.
Yeah, see, so like I actually generally understand where you're coming from. So from my own perspective relating to this, one of the key issues I've had in relation to social media interactions on social media is I don't like to use like reactionary rhetoric. I usually refer them as the fringe left. There are certain segments of our circle of politics, I'm assuming, that generally are just too quick to judge. They're too quick to apply an description. I know that's probably an understatement, Alex, but they're too quick to apply an description to motives to someone else without, in what I like to say, giving themselves enough rope to hang themselves with. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying my best, my darndest, not to denote what someone's actual motives are, because I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but I can make an opinion on what they are and who they are. Like, for example, I'm very blunt about this. I've said this in previous parts of the show, in previous episodes. Like, I think personally, in my opinion, Blair White is transphobic. And the reason why I have that perspective is from a whole slew of evidence that I can present anybody in any time through her content and how she miscues, misquotes, cherry picks, and basically does nitpicking regarding those that she talks about. And she represents that as a generalized perspective of the entire community as a whole. And that's a huge problem for me. And that's where I make my analysis on this. But I want to give everyone else a chance to share their perspective. I guess in reference to what what Brad has said, does you Perfict, Alex, Christy, do you guys have any perception in regards to that?
Well, for one, I finally read at least one of your psychology things about changing minds.
Send it to you.
Yeah. No, like I said, we've been Twitter friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've read that. I really like that. But also, yeah, the fringe left is definitely a thing. As I encountered it this morning, it was either the fringe left or someone pretending to be left. Pretending to be fringe left, because there was a lot of those same sorts of fallacies being used against me. All it was it was because I responded to something mentioning that I'm poor but culturally middle class. Because I am poor and I was raised by middle class parents, so like culturally I'm middle class, and those cultural attitudes factor into that. But whatever.
So basically, like in regards to that comment, so my question would be to that individual: if because your parents or because your upbringing was middle class, yet you yourself, by yourself right now at your current age, you are impoverished. How does the standard apply toward your parents apply to you today when you are on your own? You're a grown adult that relies solely on yourself. How does that work? Where's the logic?
Well, I think that's part of the reason why the conversation stopped after it was it slowly became impossible to argue against me pointing out that I am below the poverty line.
And real quick, Christy, Perfict, did you guys have any takes in reference to what me and Rad and Alex have said so far?
I don't really have much to add to that, no.
Okay. The generally, I've made it a policy not to block or mute anybody, because I think the argument is important to do. I blocked someone who was harassing someone else with my name. So it just seemed like a ridiculous thing. But I like the argument. It bothers me when friends of mine who are agreeing on things, start getting in each other's faces. But that's a thing that happens. But yeah, even today, I posted a thing on trans athletes, the trans athlete lawsuit in Connecticut, and one person started trying to tell me about how sports and stuff. So I engage. I take people seriously, but I don't take them. I take them as they come at me. If you come at me hard and angry, I will come back at you that way. But not usually the case. So
yeah, whereas with me with blocks, I also don't tend to block a lot, with the exception of I don't want to create an overly toxic, hostile community. If people are actually going to have a conversation, then I'm not going to block them. But if they actually actively harass others, and not for and I mean like or well, it's mostly emotional abusers, rapists, and people who groom children are people I block on Twitter because I don't want to make a community that's super open to that.
I wouldn't blame you either. That's my perspective. I wouldn't blame you either, Alex. Well, let me go on to a little bit more of a kind of like a heated topic right now, and I want to get everyone's perspective, and especially because R&D is kind enough to be here. So R&D, there's been this big discussion, and Christy brought it up. So there was a recent article Christy brought up of this lawsuit that's going on in Boston, and where I think, isn't it Boston, Christy? Wasn't it Boston?
Connecticut.
Connecticut. So there's this lawsuit in where a female athlete is suing the school district because they're trying to prevent trans athletes from competing in the same category and field. And in the article that Christy linked, it shows that this same individual, this same woman, the same student athlete, she beat the same person that she has filed a lawsuit on. Now, I'm not trying to put anyone in the spot here because I think we all have our own unique perspective. But do you have any take in regards to the subject of transgender in sports? Do you have any opinions on that you want to reference? I don't want.
Oh boy, do I have opinions.
But I just want to be fair here. If you don't have an opinion, that's completely reasonable too. I don't blame anyone.
Yeah, and if you have an opinion that we end up all arguing with you on, that's also fine because we actually like to have the discussion.
I don't think we're going to argue much with R&D on this.
I don't think so either. Oh wait, no, especially not. What am I talking about? I don't.
Yeah, especially not this one. This subject is the subject that. No, this is the subject that got me introduced. Like, I guess it did really get me introduced to the trans community. Before this, I don't think I really had like friends who had any other gender identity besides hetero or cis. So this is the subject that got me introduced to it, which is how I ended up here, really.
May I add something real quick, R&D? Maybe this will help. So I'll share my perspective on this topic, and if you can agree or disagree with my perspective.
Mm-hmm. See, I disagree with your perspective. I forgot about that.
So
I can't remember. I might disagree slightly, but like not majorly.
Well, real quick, but this one facet. See, one of the biggest issues I have about this topic myself, Rad, is in reference to I'm a layman. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm not a biologist. Of course, Alex has a little bit of a background in biology, but I'm not anywhere in that fast. My background's history. So one of the biggest problems I have, and this is a criticism in general for literally almost everyone, including myself, is a lot of people are ascribing or making claims on the subject of transgender in sports. And I find that to be a huge problem. Now, this doesn't mean people shouldn't have strong opinions on the topic. But at the same token, I think that too many people, like 99% of the people discussing this, generally don't have a good grasp of the knowledge it takes to make a good position in regards to this topic. And that's a huge problem for me. The people that see, this is one, when someone asks me what's my opinion on transgender in sports, in general, in my opinion, I think they should be able to compete full stop. But at the same token, I'm not going to say that it should be the case. It should be, in my opinion. But for me, I'm going to leave that determination to the sports experts, to the medical professionals, to the endocrinologists, the people who are actually the science behind this. And I don't know, what is your opinion on that?
So just off the bat, if you're gonna have a category, or I guess we have two at the moment, right? If you're gonna have a category for men, you have the category for women. Then you let trans men compete with men, and you let trans women compete with women. And that's I don't know if that's the best solution for whatever the problem may be. I'm not sure that there is a problem, but if you're gonna have those categories, then you're gonna have to, and you want equality, you have no option but to let trans women compete with women and trans men compete with men, because trans men are men and trans women are women, and there shouldn't be that's just the it of it. And I would say I would go so far as to say that even if tomorrow there's a new study that shows that whatever HRT does not negate any advantages that are gained through puberty, I still wouldn't care, because you made the categories as men and women, and you let men compete with men, and you let women compete with women, and that's the way it is. So I would take it that far. I also don't think that there is an issue. I think a lot of the issue is made up as in there is no evidence so far showing that trans women competing against women is hurting sportsmanship or hurting competition or has done anything to harm anyone. I don't actually think it's an issue. I think it's an issue for people who want to have an issue with trans women, but I don't think it's an actual issue, any more than baking a cake is an issue, or any more than what bathroom you use is an issue. It's a made up issue entirely used as a weapon to attack trans women, and it's mostly women that trans
and
women.
I agree. See, there was a comment from a controversial figure. I don't know what everyone's opinion is on this individual. Vosh, even if you agree or disagree in regards to this person, made a really great point that I am going to share here that I do agree with. That a lot of this talk of transgender people in sports, saying having rational discourse, having discussions, people are trying to shut down these discussions. Realistically, if you look at it from a third party perspective, all it is a form of attack against the trans community. Honestly, it is. And that's the truth. And that, a lot of people need to understand that, yes, you can speak on this topic if you have disagreements, what have you. But at the same token, you have to understand that some people are using this as a form of dog whistle when it comes to attacking other people's identity. Because no matter what you do, these individuals have a right to compete fairly in the sport designated to their identity. If you have an issue with it, then you have to address that issue to the proper authorities in regards to why rationally you would justify preventing it. See, in my opinion, again, I could be wrong, but generally society applies standards that are based on inclusion as much as possible, and then cherry pick later on which parts to exclude based on rational principles. But until that happens, I haven't seen, in my opinion, any ample justification of why there should be any type of exception to the rule. You know what I mean?
I think it was Severus. He's a
Zavaris, my roommate.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, they did a great video on it. I think they were the one who brought up the
competition
one
was
player who was way taller than everyone else.
Will Chamberlain.
I think that was it, but
because Will Chamberlain was just tall as fuck. It could have been Cream. I can't remember the roles. Oh, okay, it was Will. Because Will. Oh yeah, the rule about against dunking for Cream was made because Wilt Chamberlain had what they considered to be an unfair advantage, and then they retracted that rule because it was dumb.
Yeah. And so, but in all of those cases, one, we've changed the rules rather than saying, hey, you can't play, or hey, you're just not allowed because you're too good. We've changed the rules, which I would rather do that. Let's change the rules to allow trans women to participate rather than say trans women can't participate. And also you'd have to find a fair. Fair is weird in sports, so what fair is.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not. It's not. It's not a term that's used in sports. If you look at the Olympic thing, it's all about competition. If there can be with fairness, I mean, you could make an argument that you could when it comes to fair competition, but even then, it's about the fact that competition can occur. That this person isn't dominating something so much that you can't imagine any way for there to be an actual competition, reasons for weight classes in boxing or whatnot, because like the argument being that someone like Mike Tyson has an unfair advantage against welterweight.
So to make sure everyone has perspective, Christy, Perfict, did you guys have any opinions in light of the question? Go ahead, Perfict.
I think that people are getting lost in the rhetoric. I think that somebody calling it a women's sports, and they think that means the same thing as any other use of the word women's, when what it's talking about is a restricted category. And we don't open things up openly to everyone, and we do put restrictions in, but we focus those restrictions to be representing what the disadvantage or advantage would be. There was a runner who had it was a multiple amputee and had both legs had been replaced and used these springboard skis.
Yeah, but
they were eliminated from the Olympics because it was said to be an advantage. An analysis of their running showed that they were suffering less up and down motion and loss of energy and so on.
And then they retracted it. Yeah.
They appealed it and they said, look at the whole thing. When cornering, I'm suffering a huge disadvantage. And when coming out of the blocks, starting the race, I'm at a much bigger disadvantage. And overall, I'm at a disadvantage, not an advantage.
Mm-hmm. But
so it's about whether or not it constitutes an advantage in that particular thing that you're doing.
But even that is like, I have a problem with dumb rulings being made because oftentimes you can't pinpoint an exact advantage or disadvantage. Like in a lot of things, the weight of bones can be a disadvantage or it can be an advantage, or like what? I think banning the double amputee was dumb ruling.
Well, I don't think
after he committed murder, that was, Oscar Pretorius. After he committed murder, it was. I think he probably shouldn't have been. Should not be allowed
yeah.
But I'm saying that saying that a ruling can go in and then they have to revise that ruling on appeal. I think that doesn't sound like a dumb ruling. And I wasn't trying to advocate for a dumb ruling.
Yeah, I just.
I was pointing out that what the process is supposed to be examining is these sorts of criteria, not the rhetoric, whether or not the word women was used.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like preemptively looking into advantages or disadvantages, I don't think that's a very intelligent. I don't think that's a very helpful thing for competition. I think you need more.
It has to be for competition. It simply has to be. That's why we set up two categories. We recognize wholeheartedly that you can't have separate but equal. But in this case, we said we can't figure out any other way to do it than to have them be separate.
If I can well, real quick, if I can just add something. So in regards to my own background in history, I actually did a video on this before I had my old channel, but I want people to really know this. And I don't know if a lot of people know this from a historical perspective. Do you guys happen to know why we have the primary reason we have such a division in regards to categories in sports when it comes to gender? Do you guys generally understand why there's those two categories?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at a historical basis, you have to understand that historically, for thousands of years, women did not compete in sports in any facet, especially in professional sports. In professional sports, women did not have any of their own categories. It wasn't until 1902, 1903, until women were actually allowed to compete in any level in the Olympics. And during the 19th century, women could not even compete in any form of level other than sports clubs. And even before the 1860s, women in sports wasn't even a thing. And that's a big facet. So one of the things that I think a lot of people are missing is the very concepts we have when it comes to categories in sports comes from that derivative from history of women being excluded from participating in sports in the first place. And if you understand why there was that exclusion was not based strictly on the basis of biology, but was exclusion because of the societal pressures women had at the time in comparison to men, I think it gives a broader perspective of why we have the categories for what they are today. Does anybody agree with that or what I just said?
No, you're correct on history the history. The one thing I wanted to toss as a grenade into the thing is that we've had the first trans athlete who qualified for the Olympics, and recently, and guess what? Trans man. They're always talking about trans women, but it's a trans man who qualified.
Yeah, I believe I would imagine some. As far as I know, they've been participating since the early 2000s, 2002.
They've been allowed to. They've been allowed to. It's just no one's qualified.
Okay, I could believe that. I guess they certainly had provisions for it. But it's that's the thing that we need to be doing is letting the Olympic Committee know that if they want to be selling their product, that they're part of what the populace wants is for them to work out a way to have it be inclusive, and then leave it to them to work out how to do that. They're the ones who have the expertise, in the sports medicine. They have the experts available to them. I don't even have the experts that they have available to them. So how am I supposed to be rendering a really valuable opinion here? My valuable opinion is that we want them to be inclusive, that participation is part of human rights.
Yes.
So as you can see, go ahead, Christy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep I'm talking
please,
too much.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to get something off my shelf and it's not happening. I did a lot of things in response to the original video, and one of the things is I tried to contact all 5 of the trans athletes that were mentioned in the video that started the troubles, and I did contact one, and she sent me sports is a human rights sticker, which I keep right on my shelf, and for some reason it is not here. My Laura Jane Grace ticket stub is, but sorry, that was just for Alex. And she also sent me a thing with a toilet on it that says a trans person was here and nothing bad happened. The sports is a human right. It's not something. I wanted to be a cyclist very badly when I was younger. And I cycled all the time. I mean, I was on that bicycle all the time. From here to Niagara Falls, the actual falls, is a run, a bit of a run. It's a bit of a ride. It takes about a little over an hour and a half. But I would do that like every month, to give you an idea of how much I was on the cycle. And I realized at some point that it was going to be useless if I was ever going to be who I was, and I stopped entirely. I don't have a bicycle right now. I'm telling these sad stories today, but
No, but it's important to address them, Christy, because we all have our unique experiences, no matter what our identity is. And we see exercise is athletics is such a massive part in regards to our physical well-being. If you can't what if one of the motivators you have in regards to losing weight, being healthy, all that good jazz, to go play some form of sport. And that's a huge facet in regards to it. Right, Al?
What if one of the few types of exercise that you enjoy and to try to prevent type 2 diabetes, which runs in the family, is powerlifting? Look at these giant muscles.
What? And those are some great guns you got there. But not just. I don't think just like I think the physical component is important. Like, you know, being active and all that. Good jazz. But just from a social perspective, like if you're a teenager in high school and you want to you want to be with your friends in the soccer team or on the football team, but they won't let you on because your gender identity doesn't match or whatever excuse they want to do, then you know that's just another stigma to be added on there when you just want to have fun with your friends, just like everyone else in high school wants to do. And we are putting up these unnecessary walls to prevent people from doing the things that fulfill them as an individual.
And I think that it's kind of like to approach that. So I think one of the things that I wanted to also tackle tonight, and to address your point, is we saw this massive uptick in regards to the supposed, and I'm putting this quotations, skeptic community when it came to the trans issue. I guess my question would be, I think you mentioned R&D, and I'm not going to drop it here, but I'm going to let if you want to mention it. But you mentioned like there was a situation where you something about your association with the skeptic community or such. Is there anything you want to mention on that you brought up, or?
I'm not sure which one you're talking. Feel free to actually mention it because I'm sure that I've been very public about it.
You're a non-believer, but you're not really affiliated with a lot of.
Yeah, no, and I think, especially after this issue became a big issue. I've been an atheist, or have called myself an atheist since 2009. So what's that? 11 years now that I've like been willing to call myself an atheist. And the people who helped me get to the point where I felt comfortable being an atheist and sort of got me down the road of being like scientifically minded and just starting to drop all my superstitions were people like Seth Andrews from the Friendly Atheist, Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Raw, pretty much anyone from the ICA, Jen, pretty much all that whole crowd were the ones who got me to sort of where I am as far as like being an atheist and all that. And that was very important to me, especially when I was younger. And then when everything happened this year is when I saw the skeptic community and the atheist community do something that I found I didn't understand why, which was that they didn't stand with the trans community, which I thought was a very simple choice to make. But they didn't. And so that I don't want much to do with the atheist community or the skeptical community, because I did see people like Matt Dillahunty defend he who shall not be named, and the same thing with Seth Andrews. And
are you talking about Stephen Woodford? I'm not afraid of him.
No, but
some of them did. I mean, I'm in a small group that includes Jen Peoples and Tracy Harris and Russell Glasser. Mm-hmm. So they stood with the trans community, and that was very important. I mean, there are others as well, and I'm blanking on their names, and forgive me, but they don't watch the show anyway. So.
Mm-hmm. I do want to mention this. So, in regards to my perspective, when it comes to the situation, I also had a slight falling out when it comes to certain individuals. But for me, like one of the biggest facets is, like, for me, I've heard this rhetoric and I don't agree with it at all. People can disagree with me on my take on this, but I've heard some people say like the ACA, for example, doesn't support the trans community. And for my opinion, again, people can disagree. I don't agree with that ascription toward the ACA. Now, there could be, of course, certain individuals you can say that were troublesome in regards to appearance and the optics in regards to their defense and the takes. That's fine. But one of the biggest issues I have is I've seen a lot of individuals demonize the ACA as being this organization that is all about transphobia or promoting transphobia. And again, I have an issue with that. I mean, does anybody have an opinion in regards to that?
Okay, so I think the issue is likely so I've been trans for a while, so I am aware of the classic slogan LGB and sometimes T. And I think that sort of thing probably occurs at the ACA, sort of as a superficial levels of trans acceptance, sort of like the GLAAD organization supporting the movie fuck, I already forgot the fuck. I thought I kept
the one with the Dutch one where it was talking about the transgender.
No. There's a new one coming out.
The 2019 film that essentially is trans men erasure. I was trans men erasure. No, that's not what I was talking about. Wow, there's others.
Oh, no. It's like Dave or Davey or it's not any of
Adam.
those things. Adam, thank you. See,
that
I'm really
that was
names.
That was supported by, that was like getting major support by the GLAAD organization. And they do.
I honestly don't know about that movie. To be fair, I don't. Like, go ahead,
it is practically trans exclusionary radical feminist logic in terms of when it comes to its attitudes towards being transgender.
In regards to trans men, correct? Is that you?
Yeah, like secret, or I forget. See, this is the thing. I forgot the plot. I can't remember. If it's.
I know it, but I don't want to speak it.
Well, real quick, I want to be able to give everyone a chance. So, I mean, what is your Perfict and Rad? What is your guys' perspective? Do you guys think that the ACA is in itself, like the organization itself, is transphobic? Do you guys think that maybe certain elements were at a time, or what do you guys think? Perfict or Rad?
Well, I don't think that the ACA shows any of the evidence that I've been able to see of being transphobic. Or there may have been people in it who were. I don't know. I didn't meet everybody in the ACA for certain.
Adam, that was it.
Adam.
Yeah, sorry.
I would say that it's kind of hard to say that an organization is transphobic because it's made up of there's so many cogs involved.
Yeah.
That I can't be like, yeah, the organization's transphobic. I will say that.
Well, I mean, there's some that you kind of, that's their main focus.
Yes. Yes, that's true. There are some that's their main focus. I think something like the ACA, I don't think I could say that, but I will say that when they had an opportunity to stand by their LGBTQ plus allyship that they claim to have, I think they didn't just do a terrible job of doing that. I think they did a lot more harm than good.
So make sure. So basically, you're emphasizing that you think that they could have done better. They could have acted in more accord. Is that pretty fair with what you're saying?
God, not just like better is just like not even enough. Like. Like they could. I think they like not just do better. Like they entirely went in the complete opposite direction they should have gone. I genuinely think they did more harm than good with the way they dealt with the situation. And I think they ended up in their own way. They ended up supporting a transphobe even if I don't, I don't necessarily think that everybody in that organization is transphobic, or that the organization is in and of itself transphobic. But I think that they did end up supporting a transphobe in this particular situation rather than supporting the trans community.
Yeah, see, for me, this is again my position, and again, people are welcome to disagree. But for me, when it comes to my perspective of the ACA, my position is I don't think the organization, except maybe someone could argue a few aspects, were transphobic in nature at a time. But for me, my biggest clarification is like I've said this previous episodes that, for example, I don't think Stephen Woodford is an active transphobe. See, there's a key distinction for me. And people have always asked me, what do I mean by an active transphobe? See, for me, what happened with Rationality Rules and his take on transgender in sports, I do consider that transphobic at that time. I think his videos were transphobic. But for me today, I can't honestly ascribe the label of transphobia actively toward a person like Stephen Woodford. And the reason why is, did you get a chance, R&D, to watch his recent debate with Sargon of Akkad?
Yeah.
Did you watch my videos making fun of that?
It was good. I love that.
Yeah, but see, for me, I've watched yours as well, Alex. And for me, when I watched that debate, I just, in my personal opinion, think Stephen Woodford has a big ego issue. He succumbed to egoism, and he didn't want himself to appear wrong. And that's where it culminated to the entire court. And that's my opinion. I don't like, for me, when someone asks me, who do I consider an active transphobe? I go to a guy like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro actively practices bigotry toward the trans community based on his ideology continuously all the time. Like, there isn't a month you could not go and not find him making a talking point demonstrating bigotry toward this community. Mm-hmm. So that's when I say active transphobe, that's what I'm applying. I just can't apply that same standard to Rationality Rule or Stephen Woodford. I do agree that he was transphobic at a time in the past, but I mean, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I think I very much so, and that he's a transphobe. Okay. But I also I would agree with you that you can't. I don't know what his intent. Like I don't think he actively hates. Like, I don't think if he meets a trans individual, he's gonna be like, don't shake my hand. I don't think he's that kind of person. But that I don't think that that's the only like. I wish we had like a gradient of transphobia. Not that I wish we had one, but I wish there was a way to label a gradient of transphobia and be like, okay, you're like a light gray transphobe rather than a dark gray transphobe kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I think with Rationality Rules, I mean, aside from obviously he's egotistical, I don't think he cares about the trans community at all. And I think he has he has at the very least has had a few reactionary tendencies in the past. This is one of those things where I don't know if he is improving, but he's too egotistical to admit that he's wrong, and that's the reasoning why he reframed the whole thing, because Rationality Rules position on sports is completely different in the video against in the Sargon of Akkad video as opposed to his video when he was arguing. He lied about either lied. Well, I think he lied. He either lied or he lied to himself. He either lied to other people or lied to himself about what the argument was actually about, and never looked back.
I have had a very short conversation with one of the people who took over after the purge, and he said that they didn't do it right. And I'm not going to name them because private conversation and all of that. And I'm usually someone who says, well, if a conversation happened in the background, then it doesn't affect the public. at all. But it's when one of the leaders of the ACA has all trans people blocked on Twitter. What are you going to do with that?
I don't mean to
Wait,
ask,
who's the leader of the ACA?
like, who's blocking? Who blocked them?
There's several people on the board, which is why I'm not specifically naming.
Oh, okay.
There's several people who took over on the board, which is why I'm not specifically naming who I spoke with.
No. But who blocked a bunch of trans individuals?
Also, not saying.
Gotcha.
He's stopped doing that.
Okay.
That was, so there was a.
But there's some monolithical list of trans people that you can block.
Yep.
There's a way.
Yeah, there are block lists on Twitter.
So you can grab a list of people, and you can actually do like specific. Like if someone has like their pronouns on their description, you can actually there's a bot you can go on the internet, and you can actually go on social media on Twitter and design this bot to look for certain characteristics or names adjacent to an account. And if that account has any time interacted or followed or whatever with your Twitter account, you can actually send this bot to immediately block everyone.
Good Lord. Okay.
That's an excellent thing.
Yep.
So let's
Yeah, I don't use those.
I think we've touched base on this topic pretty hard. I guess one of the other key factors, since we're on the topic of non-belief, can I ask what exactly is your position on? Are you an anti-theist R&D? Are you just a regular non-believer? I mean, what is your perspective in regards to, if I can ask, if you want to mention?
Yeah. The anti-theist thing is a weird one because like I do want to I want to take on the label of anti-theism because I do think the theism is very harmful. But just like everyone, just like every other label, I'm like, but there's a bunch of assholes out there who can't just let people be. Like, I think theism is harmful, but I also think that you can be a theist without being a jerk. I don't think it's a 1-to-1. Not every theist is an asshole, but I do think that theism creates assholes.
So see, like for me personally, like one of my positions that I had a discussion with someone earlier today on is like I consider myself anti when it comes to certain faiths, when it comes to certain belief structures, but I can't apply that same standard of anti on the entire category because not every single religion or belief structure is all the same. Like I just can't be an anti-theist to Jainism, for example. Because if you look at the teachings of Jainism, it's not. I can't say it's harmless because I haven't deep delved into Jainism's teachings. But as far as my understanding goes, it generally has a very peaceful message. Maybe Perfict or Christy or her, do you guys have any other perspectives on the topic of anti-theism or what me or R&D has said so far?
Well, anti-theism, yeah, I can talk about that all day, but that'd be a whole show.
Talk some more about it, though.
Yeah, so if you can break it down, Perfict. Like I know, see, this is one of the great things about Perfict R&D. He has some really great takes in regards to the concepts of belief. So Perfict, let me ask you this. So since R&D's here, since I know about it, but it's great to hear it again. What is your perspective in regards to like anti-theism? If you can break it down in a short frame as much as you can.
Well, anti-theism is the belief that theism is bad for people or of people. That it's either bad of them to do it or it's bad for them to do it. And I actually hold to both of those. That it's bad of them and for them to do it because they're claiming a belief that they cannot demonstrate scientifically to others. So they've claimed a belief that is undemonstratable, that they believe something to be true that they have no way of showing to be true. That's bad for people. That makes a chink in your armor, your epistemological armor, that allows the crazy in.
Does everyone generally agree with what Perfict?
No, I will fight Perfict on this. And potentially lose. No, I have a problem with anti-theism just in terms of basing your views on being against something that exists. Like it's a weird thing because like
let's switch real quick, Alex. If we can just ask Claire. Perfect. Are you an actual like full anti, like all theism is bad? Like I want to make sure that it's clear. Is that your position? Perfect.
Well, it's theism. When you enter into a God belief, a belief about gods.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. But please continue then, Alex. I can make sure.
Yeah.
That's
so
bad of you or for you.
Yeah. So my problem is it's well, for one, just obviously it's an I personally believe that theism is an unnecessary axiom to add on your beliefs. I don't know if I'm using terminology properly, which I think everyone would agree on. But I don't. Actually, I don't think combating it. So it is possible that I just have my views are largely in terms of optics, but also in terms of what's going to actually get things done. Because I think theism will die out if so long as society is able to move more progressively. And I don't know that attacking theism directly is the best way to deal with things at all. I don't know what your opinion in response to my opinion is.
Well, I might ask if there's possible that you're creating confusion between theism, the belief in the God, and, for instance, religion and social aspects of religion.
Possibly, but how do you
how do I define a difference between religion and philosophy?
No, I just so is it just that you are completely against the you mentioned against the idea of there being the idea or anyone implementing the idea of there being a god due to the unprovability of, or sorry, realistically you're talking about omniscient deities, right?
Creator deities, basically.
Yeah, as opposed to
it's a fuzzy concept.
Yeah, as opposed to like if people if there was a type of deity that could be disproven, for instance, a deity who's not omniscient or all powerful or creator of everything, that would be less of something that you'd be against. Correct or incorrect?
I would say the unsubstantiated belief that is the case would be just as big a problem.
Well, yeah, if it's, well, it's only a problem if that's a major focus. Like if you have the belief in one single thing, if I believe every time I roll die, it's going to roll a 6, like a standard 6-sided die, it's a dumb belief. But there needs to be more of a focus for it to actually cause harm, isn't there?
No, that belief itself can start to cause the rot. It can infect other beliefs, and it can start to cause you problems, especially as you start to deny. You roll it and it doesn't turn up a 6, but there's some reason that's the case. You weren't wearing your lucky socks, So now it's a matter of you have to wear your lucky socks, and then it'll always be a 6.
But aren't you? I mean, isn't that what's the reasoning behind your claim there? That it one belief is going to create more beliefs that are also negative.
I think I just demonstrated that.
Well, you gave a slippery slope argument. That wasn't a demonstration. That was a demonstration of a hypothetical.
Okay.
That's not that's not, that has nothing to do with reality. Are you infected with?
Hold on, real quick, Alex. So let's be fair. I want to also get the other. We'll get back.
Yeah,
to you
sorry.
I love you guys' passion group. So, Christy, Brad, you guys have any takes on what has been said so far? Any opinions?
I would agree. I want to start by saying that I agree with Perfict, but as I'm listening to Alex talk more, you're kind of changing my mind there a little bit. So I'm actually very interested to hear where this goes.
What about you, Christy? Any perspective? I just want to give everyone an opportunity to voice it if they have anything to say.
Well, I'd rather be around a kind Christian than an evil atheist. Is one of the, but I think the chances of even Jainism. You mentioned Jainism. Jainism is very harmful on a lot of levels to the individual, which is not talked about. Well, Jainism is peaceful, yes, but it creates so much harm on the individual and so much not awareness, non-awareness of anything other than their religion, the religion itself. When I say and there's a lot of people attacking Islam as like, oh, this is the worst religion in the world. No, it's not. You know what is? Hindu. Hindu is the most harmful religion there is. Period. I mean, other than cults, where they kill themselves. Hindu is a horrible religion. But if I knew someone who practiced Hindu and they were a kind person, and I have, then I'm fine, and that they don't hold the beliefs that are the harmful parts and just take the nice parts away, which a lot of Christians do. So yes, I'm anti-theist, but I'm not anti-theist in practice.
Understandable. So let's get back real quick. So now, because we're going to be doing a wrap up here shortly, guys. So I want to give Alex and Perfict the final 2 says in reference to this perspective, because it's actually a really unique take. So I think Perfict, you mentioned your position, but please continue if you guys remember where you guys are at. I apologize. Just wanted to make sure we got everyone.
Yeah. So I was asking about the evidence for the continuation of that one irrational belief inherently leads to more.
Well, it's fairly well accepted, and it's fairly well historically shown where these sort of beliefs lead to problems. They continually lead to problems. It isn't like it stopped at some point. It's still happening today, where people do horrible things to other people on the simple basis of that sort of thing, where people actually kill their own children on the principle that will see them into heaven. So what greater love could there be for your own children than to see them into heaven at the cost of your going there yourself? And it's a perfectly logical extension of the logic which is taught, and they follow it. And the point is that you have to have some reason why it would be such a good idea to have a bomb in your house.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the shit. Like, well, for one thing, I'm not a fan of common sense arguments for things, and I do think that religion should be, as it has been over the past a little bit, at the very least. There's been some pushback, but religion has been downplayed at least a little bit in terms of the core logical principles of it. I don't know. I guess I see the religion as a dying thing. That so long as you can get people to think rationally, they'll kill it off themselves instead of feeling like it's being attacked. I don't know. Okay.
What did you say?
I was saying, I totally agree. That's the whole point, is that the rational thought is an antithetic to religion.
But I guess I don't really understand the because so far you've only given emotional arguments for why you would need to be anti-theism.
Well, let me try to jump in real quick, so it's just to be like the balance this out. So
sure,
I understand Perfict's perspective, and I understand Alex's as well. I'm still affirm that I'm not an anti-theist per se, but I can understand why someone could be an anti-theist, because if you look at the historical context of how
I do too, by the way.
I'm not saying you don't either, Alex.
Yeah.
But I can firmly see the strong argument of someone like Perfict in his position, absolutely. Because if you look at the historical context of religious belief and how it has influenced and divulged different sects within its own belief structure to create innate harm within each the structure. So a prime example is look at the Abrahamic faiths. It started off with Zoroastrianism. Now, a lot of people can honestly say that Zoroastrianism, that as it pertains to Iran, is a relatively not a harmless type of belief structure, but it's generally not as destructive as the other Abrahamic faiths. But then you take the other ones that derive from Zoroastrian, which is Judaism, Christianity, and then Islam. Now, if you did a category of which of those three religions is more harmful, I would place Islam as number one. That's my opinion. Maybe people can disagree. Number two would be Christianity. Number three would be Judaism. They all have innate similar beliefs, but one at the current moment in current demographics is more destructive than another.
Yeah, I disagree. I would put Christianity above Islam, especially with the rise of the fascism in Europe, of a lot of the beliefs in Russia. I mean, Russia and America are major powers that are being heavily driven by Christianity to do cruel things.
Yeah, but I see, for me, the clear distinction to kind of like apply what both of you guys are saying is my position on this is the ideals are what's the problem. I completely agree with Perfict that an ideal can be used to create more harmful ideals in the future. But at the same token, you also have to categorize that if such ideal is the one that's at fault for creating such ideals, then you must criticize it, ostracize it, and make sure that this type of ideal doesn't get spread even further. And I think for me, I think both of you guys have very unique perspectives. That's pretty fair. I understand what you're getting at, Alex, in regards to why you wouldn't like really consider yourself an anti-theist, but I also understand Perfict from his position too. And I guarantee you guys, to be fair, we will come back to this discussion. We'll probably make an entire episode in regards to non-belief and anti-theism and all that good jazz. To be fair with you guys, would that be okay with you, Perfict and Alex?
Sure. Yeah, no, I would be totally interested in that conversation.
I just want to be able to be fair for our great host, our special guest. So we
yeah,
get a chance
definitely.
to wrap up. So real quick, what we do now, R&D, is we do our general promotion wrap up. I like to give everyone here an opportunity to speak on, what projects they're working on. Real quick, so I want to give you the last word, R&D, out of your kindness for you being here. Alex, you got anything going on the next week in regards to projects or anything?
Yeah, hopefully I can actually finish that project I'm working on in terms of the detention centers. I mean, I would refer to them as concentration camps, but in the video, largely I refer to them as detention centers because I am genuinely trying to. What?
That's regarding ICE, correct?
The ICE, because I have a lot of criticisms of the ICE, and I have a lot of sources that you can't really dispute for the criticisms. I don't think that anyone can make an argument against Homeland Security when it comes to well, no. I mean, in terms of Homeland Security has a report about problems with ICE detention centers violating government rules. If the Homeland Security is arguing against the ICE treatment of people, it's it's not a good sign.
Yeah, see, one of the things I want to mention in light with what you're saying, Alex, is as I mentioned in our discussion, which I don't know if you published. You haven't published our discussion yet, have you?
No, I wasn't going to do the whole discussion. I was maybe. Well, the thing is, I probably use it for the other thing because I had the discussion and then I totally went a different direction.
It's okay. So no, but when it comes to touch bases on your discussion, this is the biggest issue I agree with you on. Is the biggest problem I have when it comes to this topic is most of the people that are being detained by ICE are asylum seekers. They're legal by every definition when it comes to legal protection, and that's a huge problem. And when you have people treating these legally recognized refugees trying to run away from political violence and such, and we're treating them in this manner, imagine what would happen if an American was treated in this fashion if they try to.
Well, plenty of Americans have been treated in this fashion.
Yeah.
Well,
one died not too long ago.
Well, no, but I mean, American citizens have been accidentally detained by the ICE on numerous occasions, thousands of those.
I'm talking particularly, Alex, is imagine what would happen if you had an American put into a concentration camp at a country like, for example, let's say Mexico. Mexico had internment camps, again, quotation internment camps, and we locked up their children, or they locked up their children in the same manner. Can you imagine the outrage the United States would have if such an occurrence happened, if an American citizen that happened to? There would be a massive uproar.
Yeah.
That's, again, my take. Anything else you're working on, Alex? But I'll make sure
I'm starting to think of a way to work out something with Ben about my problems with Ben Shapiro, because being born and raised Jewish, the fact that Ben Shapiro and his Orthodox Republican bullshit annoy me. So
I think that would be actually a very interesting take, since from our last discussion on Judaism we had a discussion on. So Alex, I look forward to that. Make sure you send me those links so I can put them in the description tab. Perfect. I know you don't really have anything. Is that still correct?
That's still correct.
Gotcha. Hopefully that changes. Christy, so do you have anything going on in the next week or so that you want to tell everyone about?
I'm scrambling to get a guest for this week. The person I had lined up couldn't do it, and now I'm kind of lost, and I'm not scheduling far in advance again.
I want to see a discussion between you and Perfect.
What's that?
I want to see a discussion between you and Perfect. That's my.
I would love to see that.
That's my request. I don't know if you guys would arrange that. I would love to see a discussion between you and Perfect because you guys have very unique takes on things. So that's my opinion. But please continue. I'm sorry.
If Perfect would come on and talk to me, I would absolutely love it. I enjoy Perfect's company. Yes, that's great. If we can arrange it.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Okay. But
give me something to promote.
Well, I kept promoting the Jesse Gender thing, and it kept getting circumstances kept getting in the way. But we finally did our part 1 this last week, and it was pretty amazing. It was worth the wait. So on my channel is the last thing on there is the Jesse Gender part 1 of the interview, and it was one of the 4 I'm proudest of. So.
And I also wanted to mention, you said earlier that you were doing, like you already went into about this, your performance with the Planned Parenthood support. Can you mention where that's happening at first, Christy, so everyone can if they want to check it out, they can go and check it out?
I don't know how many people from Buffalo are going to see this, but it's going to be at the Mohawk
Inn. You never know.
The Mohawk Inn downtown, which is a great venue to play.
Yeah, so if you never know the circumstances, maybe someone from Buffalo will watch it, Christy. If you can share that information with me later, if you want to share it, I can put it in again in the information tab so everyone can have a good gist of where you're going to be performing if they want to check you out. So, did you have anything else, Christy?
No, if I say it, then it'll make me do it. But I'm going nerd. I'm one of those strange nerds who's really not seen the original Star Trek, the original series.
What?
Yeah. So I've seen some of them. So I started watching from the beginning, and I said, I have a lot of comments on this. So I think I want to do a nerd thing where I'm going to do a commentary on each one of them as I go through. So that'll A, make me watch it, and B, make me actually do some nerdy videos.
We'll touch base on that. Goddammit. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so we'll touch base on that.
If you make it the fact it's after your first viewing of it.
Hey, that would be a good discussion between you and Perfect.
Actually, the philosophical ramifications of the cage, I would absolutely kill to talk about.
That's going to be awesome. Real quick, so we do this wrap up. So I'm Eliani Clark. You can find me on social media. I have really nothing working other than my series called Trans History. This week, I'm either going to be tackling paganism and gender or Christianity and gender. That's it. And of course, working with these great folks on this amazing show. So, and of course, our special guest, R&D. Thank you so much for appearing on our show tonight. I know this is probably not your normal thing, as this is kind of like a free flow topic. But R&D, do you have any new videos coming out this week? Anything that you'd love the people to know about? Or
I think I'm in the same boat as Christy. If I say it, then I have to do it. If nothing else, I have a weekly stream. So if you want content, I do have a weekly stream.
When is that stream? For everyone can know, when is that stream? R&D?
Sundays at noon Central US time. So I let the chat pick the topic. We have a list of videos that they can pick from. We usually talk about them. I try to have a large range. We have like a flat Earth video with some like abortion videos, but like anti-abortion videos by Christians and creationist videos, and anti-trans videos by Blair White. So we got a nice big bag of options, and depending.
I would recommend. This is just my recommendation. I recommend you review some of Rosa Dawn's content. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And I know what you're trying to encourage me to do, and I do want to do it, and it's one of those things that if I say it, I do.
You'll be stuck with it. Well, everyone, I greatly appreciate everyone's participation tonight. Thank you so much for anyone who's watched the show. As always, as soon as the show uploads, we're going to have it live for everyone to watch. We'll be broadcasting with our next topic for next week I also want to mention we're going to have another amazing guest by the name of Jen from the ACA. She's going to speak on us on the topic for that week. We don't know exactly what that is, but we will make sure to forward that to everyone. And I greatly appreciate everyone for watching. And thank you to all my co-hosts and special guests R&D for participating in our discussion tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, guys.
Goodbye, my beautiful lovelies in the audience and round table.
Peace, everyone.
And we're out. Thank you so much, R&D.